To God be the glory.
Welcome back to our study in the book of Genesis. We had got down to chapter 8, and we'd made it through the first 5 verses, so we'll begin at verse 6 in our lesson today. Chapter 8, verse 6 down through 12, it says, "So it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Then he sent out a raven which kept going to and fro until the waters had dried up from the earth. He also sent out from himself a dove to see if the waters had receded from the face of the ground. But the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot, and she returned into the ark to him, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her, and drew her into the ark to himself. And he waited yet another 7 days, and again sent the dove out from the ark. And then the dove came to him in the evening, and behold, a freshly plucked olive leaf was in her mouth. And Noah knew that the waters had receded from the earth. So he waited yet another 7 days, and sent out the dove, which did not return again to him any more." And so notice this, verse 6, at the end of the 40 days, and here's the testing of the waters covering the earth by the use of birds. Noah would first send out a raven, but also a dove. Now, the raven would land anywhere. That's the kind of bird that even if there was an animal that had died in the flood and was floating on the surface of the water, the raven would land on that, and so the raven did not return. But then the dove would only land on dry surface, and so the dove would return. And so 7 more days, and then the dove was sent out again and returned with an olive leaf. And so then Noah knew, okay, the waters are starting to go down now, and so those leaves are being exposed, and so the dove brought back the olive leaf. And then 7 more days, the dove sent out, and it did not return because now the land was dry because the waters had receded. Look at verses 13 and 14 for the duration of the flood. And it says, "And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, in the first day of the month, that the waters were dried up from the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and indeed the surface of the ground was dry. And in the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dried." So what was the duration of the flood? Well, when we look back to the beginning of this in Genesis 7, verse 11, and also chapter 8 and verse 14 here, we can calculate and see that the duration of the flood was 1 year and 10 days. It did. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. We know that from Genesis 7 and verse 12. But the flood, the actual water upon the earth, lasted for 1 year and 10 days. The water continued to cover the earth, even though the rain had already stopped. And so it took that long, 1 year and 10 days, for the waters eventually to recede. Think about Noah and his time on the ark as he's caring for his family and the animals all during that time. Think about what he is going through, and he is realizing that God is protecting him, God is caring for him, and so I'm sure it was a great building of the faith during this time. Verse 13, the waters were gone, the local outlook of things. And then verse 14, the earth itself is dry. And so the global outlook, now the water is gone. All right, let's look at verses 15 through 19 of chapter 8, 15 through 19. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife, and his sons' wives with him, every animal, every creeping thing, every bird, and whatsoever creeps on the earth, according to the families, went out of the ark. And so now God commands Noah, it's time to leave the ark, you and your family and all the animals. You can depart from the ark. You no longer need that ark of safety to protect you. Now that the waters have receded, you can come back out into the dry ground. Notice what happens after this. This great blessing that he has received from God, obviously Noah is going to have thanksgiving in his heart concerning that he and his family has been spared from this great destruction. So in verses 20 through 22, it says, "And Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled soothing aroma. And then the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease." And so we have a promise from God. After this thanksgiving from Noah, that here he offers these sacrifices unto God. And so God promised Noah that he will not curse the ground again. Although man's, or because or for or account of, the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. He will not destroy earth or every living thing, he says, as I have done. In other words, I won't do this again with water. Now, this doesn't take away the final judgment and the earth being destroyed with fire that we read about in 2 Peter chapter 3. So while the earth remains, notice what the Lord has promised. There'll be seed times and harvest. There'll be cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night. These things shall not cease, but they will continue. Now let's look at chapter 9. Look at verse 1. "So God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Now notice that was said before with Adam and Eve, and now this promise is renewed, and he says to be fruitful and multiply. Verse 2, "And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the air, on all that move on the earth, on all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hand. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Surely for your lifeblood I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it, and from the hand of man, from the hand of every man's brother, I will require the life of man. Whosoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. And as for you, be fruitful and multiply, both bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply in it." Several things we need to notice. Verse 1, of course, be fruitful and multiply. This is what was supposed to take place. Here you have Noah and his family, his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. What were they supposed to do? Well, to fill the earth and all the descendants that would come from this family. Everyone on the earth today, we can all trace our roots back to Noah and his family. And so here they're going to be fruitful and multiply. Verse 2 talks about the animals are going to fear man, and this refers to the wild beasts and birds, not the domesticated animals, but those that were in the wilds. And in verses 3 and 4, we have a prohibition against eating blood, for life is in the blood. This was a universal law. It was repeated later in the law of Moses, Deuteronomy 12, verses 23 through 25, and also in the law of Christ, Acts 15 and verse 20. In verses 5 through 6, we see the prohibition against the taking of human life. Vengeance belongs only to the Lord. And even today, under the law of Christ, vengeance still belongs only to God. Look at Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, look at verses 19 through 21. It says, "Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him drink. For in so doing you will heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good." And so, as the people of this world, we do not have that right to personally seek out vengeance on someone else. Now, of course, we understand the laws of the land and disobeying those laws, but here we're talking about that personal vengeance that someone might be tempted to do and say, no, that doesn't belong to you. We are not allowed to do that. Now let's look at verses 8 through 17 and talk about the rainbow that was put in the sky. Then God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And as for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds and the cattle, and every beast of the earth with you, of all that go out of the ark, every beast of the earth. Thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant which I will make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. And here it is, verse 13. Here's that sign of the covenant. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all the flesh that is on the earth. So the covenant of the rainbow, not to destroy every living creature again by a flood. God would never do that again. And of course, that doesn't eliminate the fire and destruction at Christ's second coming in 2 Peter chapter 3. But here the rainbow is a sign. And it is still a sign for us today when we look to the sky after the rains have fallen. You say, okay, is he going to flood the earth again? No, there's the rainbow in the sky to remind us that yes, he is remembered. God has remembered us with kindness and granting requests and protecting and delivering, just as he did with Noah. And so you see what a great thing that is for our faith. And to build our confidence in God when we see that in the sky and still see it today. You say, oh, this world has become so evil. Surely God is going to bring his flood upon this world again and destroy all the evil men. No, he has made his promise. And it's a covenant between him and us that he's not going to flood the earth again. Now, will there be a great destruction at Jesus' second coming? Yes. When Jesus comes and those who are faithful meet him in the air, the earth, the elements therein will be burnt up with a fiery heat. And so we know there's going to be that destruction. But God is not going to use rain or the water to do that. When you're in a terrible storm and you see the rains coming down and it is so thick, it's coming down so fast, the drops are so large and you think, oh, this is horrible. Is this it? No. God has promised he's not going to destroy the world again with water. Now look at verses 18 and 19 of this same chapter. Now the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. And so we see the sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And notice it mentions that Ham was the father of Canaan. And this is going to figure out in the story in just a moment when we look at this account and see what takes place and why Canaan is mentioned here when talking about the three sons. All right, verse 20. It says, And Noah began to be a farmer, and he planted a vineyard. And then he drank of the wine and was drunk and became uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid on both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away. and they did not see their father's nakedness. What an unusual event is this, but really it's telling us something about morality and what should be thought of. Now we see Noah became drunk. He was uncovered in his tent. Ham saw the nakedness, and in the original language, the idea is that he saw it and would, with delight, he would mock and ridicule and inwardly laughing at his father in some way. And so he goes out to tell the brothers about this, and still that lighthearted way, not looking at this the way that he should have, not looking at his father with respect, with the right kind of attitude. Well, the brothers had the right kind of attitude, and they would go in and they would cover their father. They would go backwards and not look, and so not to take away the honor that should be given to him. And then we see the curse, cursed be Canaan. And you might say, well, why Canaan? Why does it not mention Ham? Well, it's saying that the father and the son are so much alike that this narrative is going to show the result of the curse of Ham, it's even going to continue with Canaan. He's going to have that same kind of disrespectful attitude and to make light of things which should not be made light of. And so because of that attitude, he's just like his father. And so the curse is seen that it goes down to the son as well. Now, Canaan could have learned by his father's mistake and chosen not to live the same way, but he did not. He fell into that same temptation and had that same attitude as did his father Ham. And so the curse is passed down to that next generation because of what he did, because of his actions. He could have chosen not to, but of course he did not. And because of that, we see the results. Now, notice verse 24. So Noah awoke from his wine and knew that his younger son had done to him. And then he said, Cursed be Canaan, servant of servants he shall be to his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. In verse 28, Noah lived after the flood 350 years. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. And so here we see the sons being mentioned there, the Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and the blessing to come to those sons which were good, and also the curse that would come upon the son that was evil, and even his descendants, because they would continue in his evil way. And here we see the days of Noah were 950 years, and then he died. What a great life do we see in Noah. We see a man who always did according to what the Lord commanded him to do when he was given this great task to build an ark so that he might spare himself and his family and those animals that would be brought into the ark. What a great man was Noah. And all because he had that right attitude of righteousness and obedience to God, doing as the Lord commanded him to do. We don't have the same commands as did Noah in that day. We are not commanded to build an ark, but we are commanded to obey God. And we are commanded to follow the law that we are under, the law of Christ. And so will we have the attitude of Noah? Will we follow his example and follow the commands that we have been given today? Now let's go on to chapter 10. Here in our outline, what we see is the posterity of Noah and the early races of the Near East. And this will be in chapter 10, verse 1 through chapter 11, verse 32. So in chapter 10, we find the history of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Let's look at that. Notice verse 1 first. And now this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The sons were born to them, and the sons that were born to them after the flood. So now after the flood, be fruitful and multiply. This is taking place. And so we begin to see the descendants from Noah. Verse 2, the sons of Japheth were Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. And the sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan were Ilshahah, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. For these were the coastland people of the Gentiles, were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language, according to the families into their nations. So there's not a lot of comments to make concerning the names. There are some names that are similar that we've seen before, and that's not surprising. Some of these names were used more than once, such as Lamech, who was a descendant of Cain, who was very evil in the things that he would do. But that's not the same Lamech who was the father of Noah. He was a descendant of Shem and was righteous. And so here we see that the names can be used more than once. Verse 6, notice what it says there. The sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, Sabbatek. And the sons of Raman were Sheba and Dedan. Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. Notice specific information given concerning him. It says in verse 9, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. So he was such a mighty hunter and known for that, that it became a saying. So somebody say, well, he's like Nimrod. He's a mighty hunter before the Lord. And so it's interesting there that he is specifically mentioned in that place. Notice verse 10. In the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From the land he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Resen between Nineveh and Calah. This is the principal city. Now, you're noticing some names here probably that you think about, okay, we have more information about some of these places later on, and we do. And so here it's laying kind of the groundwork and talking about these various places, but then later on in our studies, we're going to get more information concerning some of these things. And so in Genesis, maybe it might just mention a place, but it will figure in greatly in the history of the children of Israel. And so it will be seen later on, and more detail will be given. Verse 13, Mizraim begat Ludum, Anamim, Lahabim, and Naphtuim, and Parthrusim, and Caluim, from whom came the Philistines. Now, of course, we see a lot about them. And Caphatorim. And so then look down to verse 15. Still continuing that lineage, but listen for those names that perhaps you've heard before. Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and Jebusite, the Amorite, and the Girgashite, the Hivite, the Archite, and the Sineite, the Averdite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamorite. Afterward, the families of the Canaanites were dispersed, and the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as you go towards Gerar, as far as Gaza, then as you go towards Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, as far as Lasha. These were the sons of Ham, according to their families, according to their languages in the lands and in their nations. Well, there we saw many of the names that we will become familiar with as we go through the Bible and study these things. The Canaanites, especially, talking about them, the things that they would do. But also notice the mentioning of Sodom and Gomorrah and how they're going to figure into the story as we learn more concerning those cities. Now look at verse 21. And the children were born also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder. The sons of Shem were Elam and Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram were Uz, and Hol, and Gethar, and Mash. Arphaxad begot Selah, and Selah begat Eber. To Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. And his brother's name was Joktan. And Joktan begat Almadad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth and Jerah, Hadaram, Uzal, and Diklah, Obal, Abimelech, and Sheba. Now, one of the things I noticed there, look at verse 25, and Eber, he's mentioned in 24 and also in 25, Eber is mentioned. There are some believe that it's from Eber and from his descendants because of his prominence, and we don't know any more than what's mentioned here, but there are some who believe that the name Hebrew came from Eber. Well, maybe that is the case and maybe not, but it is interesting to think about because we are going to learn much about the Hebrew people, and perhaps it came from that name Eber. So verse 30, and their dwelling place was from Mesha as you go toward Sephar, the mountain of the east. And these were the sons of Shem according to their families, according to their languages and their lands, according to their nations. These were the families of the sons of Noah, according to their generations in the nations. And from these the nations were divided on the earth after the flood. Now, isn't it interesting to see that it talks about the various nations and also talks about the various languages, them according to their language? And you say, well, I don't understand because don't they all speak the same language? Well, what we have taking place here is as we're going through these genealogies, it's talking about future events and things that are going to happen. There's going to be that division of languages, which we will see in our next study when we get to that, when we talk about the Tower of Babel and the languages were confused. And so at this point, yes, time frame wise, they're all speaking the same language, but as time goes on and they're tracing this genealogy, these various groups, well, of course, there's going to be that distinction that's going to be made with the languages. And so we will see that take place. So the verse 32, these were the families of the sons of Noah, according to their generations, in their nations, and from these the nations were divided on the earth after the flood. Now, of course, that's what was supposed to take place. Remember, they were told to be fruitful and to multiply. They were supposed to cover the earth, and so the only way that could happen was if they would actually separate. You know, mankind had that tendency to stay together and to not separate and to go out and to cover more of the earth. It seems to be always the case that man wants to stick together and doesn't want to spread out. In much the same way with the early church. You might remember the early church beginning in Jerusalem in Acts chapter 2, that of course here they were all together in one place, but they had been commanded to take the gospel into the world. And they were hesitant to do that until, of course, there was persecution that came upon them. And because of that persecution, they spread out. They went out teaching the word, went everywhere proclaiming the truth of the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ and the salvation of men. And so in that way, the message was spread. And so many times what we see down through history is man wanting to cluster together and stay together and not spread out. And it's not surprising that with the same way with God's Word, sometimes it was kept in one place. Well, no, it needs to spread. Others need to be told. As you are learning these lessons and learning more about God and His Word, you need to tell others concerning the things that you have learned. Share with them these truths so they can have a deeper understanding of God and His Word. And they can hear concerning the events such as Noah and his faithfulness to God to do those things always that he was commanded to do by God. They need those lessons as well. And so that word needs to spread. Well, our time is up for the class today. We'll have to stop here. Be sure and read ahead so you know the information that we're going to be covering. So it'll make it easier for you that this won't be new material introduced to you. And so we'll look at these things next time, see some more information as we continue to see the genealogy, to see it going all down through time, which eventually would come to who? to the Christ. And this is what the story is all about. The story of Jesus Christ and his coming through this family. And so we'll stop there. The lesson is yours. I look forward to seeing you next time.